Let's be clear, bad bosses exist, and they exist everywhere. Leadership isn't about control, it's about influence. And the best place to start is by leading yourself. As a leader, am I blaming or am I taking ownership and saying, what can I do to shift that could create a better environment and remove the label of being a shitty boss? I will be the first to say that leadership is hard, but there are ways to make it easier. Let me ask you something. Are you that boss? That boss that's always frustrated with their team? That boss that doesn't think their team is pulling their weight? That boss that feels like it's their team that's the reason why they might be failing or not driving results? Well, here's the gut punch. What if the reason really isn't your team? What if it's you? What if it's you that's creating the toxic culture? What if it's you that's creating the environment to not lead the team to drive real results? What if it's you that creates the lower engagement? I know that's hard to swallow, but ultimately it could be you that is the greatest headwind. A lot of times as leaders, our wounds are self-inflicted. If you're really honest with yourself and you take this self-assessment, I promise you, this one is actually going to hit home. I'm Chad Carden, founder of the Carden Group, and I have worked inside organizations to improve their culture for over 2.5 decades across the globe. And I cannot tell you how many environments I walk into and realize it comes down to one thing: the leader. The leader truly impacts the way the environment shows up, the way the results show up, and more importantly, the way their people show up. And I have worked with these leaders to shift the way that they lead to create a better culture, a better environment, and better results. If you're new here, I post content weekly about how to improve the performance of people, which ultimately will drive even better results and greater future success. So let's set the foundation around this topic. Let's be clear. Bad bosses exist, and they exist everywhere. There is so much bad leadership out there, and that's just not me saying it. The statistics actually show it. Let me share with you some statistics as I kind of prepared for this video. One of the things that was interesting to me and actually shocking, it's over $630 billion that's lost every single year to poor leadership with lost productivity here in America. It's in the trillions in the globe. So it puts a real dollar amount to it. With toxic leaders create horrible bottom lines. Here's another one. Studies show that 65% of employees report they perform better if their leaders communicated more clearly and provided better direction. And 83% say their employees are disengaged when they feel micromanaged. If you're a bad leader and you don't communicate and you micromanage, you are not going to drive the results. Again, it's not your team, it's you. Your wounds are self-inflicted. Another one is 70% of employees say they would stay at a company longer if they felt more supported. People just don't feel supported by their leader. And I know there's every excuse out there by leaders. I don't have time. I'm asked to do more with less. They're giving me people that don't really understand and I have to take time to teach them. I have so much more on my plate. I get all that. Ultimately, if you don't set your people up for success, you are creating long-term headaches for you and your team as you move forward. That's another one. Here's another one. Employees are 3.5 times more likely to be higher engaged if they fully understood their manager's expectations. 3.5 times doesn't seem a lot, but 3.5 times more engaged means that they're better results, they're more productive, they're more efficient if they just truly understood their leaders' expectations, which they don't. We do a horrible job of creating clear goals and clear expectations with our team. The quicker we can admit that and stop BSing ourselves and get our ego out of the way, the easier it is for us to be a better leader. So that's one of my challenges to you, is just stop bullshitting yourself and telling yourself you're a good leader. Buy into this and make changes that can have real impact. A couple more here really quick. Leaders with high emotional intelligence, so leaders that can really connect with their people, see an increase in their team performance by 25%. What if you had 25% more output from your team? What if you were able to get 25% better results? What impact would that have? It would ultimately make life easier on you and create less frustration. And the last one here is 73% of employees say they want to feel that their opinions and ideas matter and that they're actually valued by their leader. So 7 out of 10 people don't think that they're valued by their leader. This is a real problem. This is my case, and the data supports it, that there are bad bosses everywhere and it's toxic. It's time to admit it. So let me ask you a question. Are you clearly communicating with your teams? Are you clearly communicating the goals? Are you clearly communicating the expectations? If we were to ask them what you expect of them, will they be able to tell us exactly what your thoughts are? Because if not, it's your responsibility. It's on you to make those changes that drive a better working environment. Think about a situation lately where you were frustrated at work. Maybe the team didn't perform the way that you wanted them to perform. Maybe you missed deadlines. Maybe you didn't get results. The question has to become really internal. Was it the external environment, or was it you as the leader? Poor leadership exists, and it's time to be honest and audit where you're at. Let me give you a few questions to think about as you're looking in the mirror and reflecting how you're doing as a leader. Here's one. Do I clearly communicate my expectations? What we found in our years of doing this is that uncommunicated expectations creates pre-planned resentment. So are we clearly communicating our expectations? If I were to ask you right now to write down the top 3 things that you expect of your team every single day, and then we would take your team individually and ask them, what are the top 3 things that you expect of them every single day? Would they match up? And if they don't, it's not an indictment. I'm not trying to position it as a gig. It's just an opportunity to create clarity around expectations using crystal clear communication. The next one, am I fostering a culture of growth, or am I fostering a culture of fear? Do I create a shared experience where my people feel comfortable approaching me? Do I create a shared experience where people feel as if they have a voice? Do I create a shared experience where I'm keeping my people informed? That's a growth culture. That's fostering something where they are comfortable in their role. They know that there's opens of lines of communication, not a culture of fear where anytime somebody comes to me, I either defend my position, I justify my position, or I tell them that they don't know what they're talking about. That's a position of fear, not a position of fear where they don't feel like they have a voice and everything's dictated by me. That's creating a culture of fear, not an opportunity for them to partake and be involved in and understand why we do certain things the way that we do because I'm not communicating. That's a culture of fear. So are you creating a culture of growth, or are you creating a culture of fear? That's another one to think about. The next one to think about is, do I listen as much as I talk? Right? Am I truly listening? There are many levels of listening, okay? All the way from pretending we're listening to be 100% engaged, and there's levels all in between. That's a whole different video. But am I really listening to understand? Or am I just listening to respond? Am I going through the motions, or am I truly trying to understand my team? Do I even listen? Or do I just talk all the time and expect that they're supposed to just fall in line and do whatever I say and just move things forward? Am I truly engaging my people to create a stronger working relationship, to foster trust, to foster respect, to foster rapport? Or am I just laying things out and being a dictator all the time? I don't know where you're at. Audit yourself. And finally, do I take ownership? Or do I blame everybody else? Do I find reasons to blame other people on why we're not driving results, why people aren't engaged, why people aren't working together, why people aren't aligned, why people aren't clear? Or am I looking in the mirror and saying, you know what, there's things that I can do that will help increase the engagement, increase trust, increase clarity around expectations? What am I doing? And so as a leader, am I blaming? Or am I taking ownership and saying, what can I do to shift that can create a better environment and remove the label of being a shitty boss? So if any of these questions actually made you think, and if you were honest with yourself and said that there's a gap or there's deficiencies, that's a good thing. Self-awareness is a key driver to being a good leader. Leadership isn't about control. It's about influence. And the best place to start is by leading yourself. Ultimately, I've been leading people for over 2.5 decades, and I'm not immune to being a shitty leader. I raise my hand. I have the wounds to prove it. Ultimately, what I have been trying to work on, because there's always growth in my world too, what I have been trying to work on over the past 3 or 4 years is I am the biggest roadblock to growth in my organization. I will give people things to do, and then I will do them because I can do them quicker, I can do them faster. And sometimes I will set out expectations, and then I will completely go against those expectations, or set a goal and go completely against that goal. I know that's the life of an entrepreneur. I know that I'm thinking about a million different things, but it doesn't set my team up for success. And sometimes I need to bring sensitivity in and realize that when I give somebody an opportunity to do something, to allow them to do it. I am notorious for giving somebody a task and then doing the damn task. And so over the past 3 or 4 or 5 years, I have been working self-consciously to look in the mirror, just like I'm asking you to do, to make changes because my team has grown. We have now bigger responsibilities. Our organization continues to grow, and I just can't do it all. And when I get out of the way, what I find when I set up the team for success, when I clearly communicate expectations, when I allow them to live into their role, when I show appreciation when they show up and do the things I'm asking them to do, when I create an environment of trust, respect, rapport, and engagement, what I find is the company continues to move in the right directions. When I don't do those things, when I get in the way, when I maybe change the rules of the game, when I maybe take away tasks that I ask them to do, I find that I'm just creating hindrance and headwinds and roadblocks to where it is we want to go. So ultimately, as I ask you to look in the mirror, I look in the mirror daily, and I have a lot of room for growth. My growth edge is basically now get the hell out of the way and let the team do what they do best, which is move this business in the right direction. What can you do? What can you do today that can help make your team even better, even stronger, drive better results, create less frustration, create less confusion? Whatever that is, do it. And if you don't know where to start and you need guidance, check out the Design Leader digital course. It gives you over 2 hours of content and tools and techniques that can set you up to be a successful leader. It can take you from being a shitty leader, not saying you are, it can take you from being one to a great leader that can lead into an even better future. So now that we've looked in the mirror and went through that self-assessment, let's talk about how we can move from maybe just managing people or just being in a leadership role to actually leading. Let me throw a caveat out here. I will be the first to say that leadership is hard, and it probably gets more difficult by the day. You're asked to do more with less. Your team dynamics are interesting. The organization is probably putting different challenges on every single day. So I am not suggesting that it's easy, but there are ways to make it easier. Let's dive into the how and give you practical and tactical tools that you can leverage immediately. First, let's look at seeking honest feedback. This is a tough one, right? But being real and allowing your people to give you honest feedback about how you show up. You can do a blind 360. We do those all the time for organizations. You can just create a roundtable and create an environment where people are open and honest with you. However you seek feedback doesn't matter. It just matters that you seek honest feedback. The most important thing is if you're going to seek it, what you do with it. If you take the time to truly get that feedback and people feel that they can be authentic and sincere with you, what you do with that feedback is even more important. What adjustments can you make? How can you reset expectations? How can you show people that you're going to leverage that feedback to create a better you, to create a better leader, to create a better team, to create a better environment that drives even better results for your people, your team, your organization as they move forward? So first thing is seek it. It's tough, but I think it's invaluable as you move forward and grow as a leader. Next, reflect regularly. Take time to call time out. We rarely call time out these days and assess how we are doing. Every once in a while, it's about that check-in. I call it centering the needle. It's just, are we still on point? Are we still on the path? It's looking at what you're doing. It's looking at what the team's doing. It's looking at what's working and leveraging what's working and running what's working. It's looking at what's not working and making those shifts. Small hinges swing big doors. Making those little shifts that can make big changes. So check in regularly. See how you're doing. Call time out. This is what all great teams do every once in a while. They just call time out and they just assess and make shifts as needed, but also leverage the things that are working to drive future and better results as you move forward. Understanding your leadership style is vital to being a good leader, right? How do you show up? How do you lead? How do you communicate? How do people perceive you when you communicate? This is all vitally important. If you don't understand that, I mentioned the Design Leader Digital course. I have an entire section on leadership styles and how to make sure you understand yours, and more importantly, how to flex to others to maximize strong working relationships. Another one is practicing emotional intelligence. I am a firm believer, and I can't prove it in a court of law, but I'm a firm believer that how you work with people opens doors. When I was 14 years old, I made a decision that this is what I want to do with my life. I had a chance to meet Zig Ziglar in Chicago. He was sharing the stage with my dad, and I went backstage and I met Zig, and I said, this is what I want to do with my life. I'm not that smart. I have a 4-year bachelor's degree. I cheated 3.5 years to get there, right? I didn't graduate in the top half of my class. I did graduate in the half that made the top half possible, so that's an accomplishment for me. But I just knew that if I could understand and work with people, that many doors would open. And more doors have opened in my life. I'm not talking about manipulation. I'm talking about understanding how to really, truly connect and work with people that can create a life that I could only imagine and dream of. Over the past 2.5 decades, I've had a chance to do this. And I equate my success to emotional intelligence and being able to work with and authentically and sincerely show up with people that create win-win-win situations. Practice your emotional intelligence. See where it goes. A couple more here. Own your own mistakes. Be willing to raise your hand and say, that was on me. Be willing to fall on the sword for the sake of that saying, even sometimes for your team. Be willing to be in front when things aren't happening. Just today, I received an email from our client about something that they weren't necessarily happy with. I had to own up to it. I could have, combated it. I could have defended it. I could have said, well, that's not the way we see it. I just owned up to it. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I do it all the time, but I believe it's sometimes not the situation. It's how you handle the situation that creates future success or future failure. And sometimes it's just about owning your own mistakes. And lastly, be open to growth. There are studies out there that say 60% of CEOs admittedly say they're making it up as they go. Another one, 2 out of 5 CEOs after 18 months in their position are struggling. 1 out of 3 CEOs in the first 3 years of that being in that position are asked to leave. So if the CEOs, the people who are supposed to be at the top leading our organizations, don't have it figured out, stop suggesting that you have it all figured out. There's always room for growth. Be open for growth and find ways to enhance your leadership abilities that can enhance your productivity, that can enhance your results, that can create a better environment for yourself, your team, your department, and your organization. Stop with the ego and stop thinking you know it all, because we just don't. There's always opportunity for growth. Be open to it as you drive forward. So here's the real question. Are you that boss, or are you that leader that people actually want to follow? Because leadership isn't about a title. Leadership is about impact. Leadership is about legacy. Leadership is about moving things forward. That's what real leadership is about. The question becomes, how do you become that leader that actually people want to follow and move into the future with? The hard truth is the quality of leadership drives the quality of people that drives the quality of the organization. We always say that organizations improve when people improve, and people improve when leaders improve. So it starts with you as a leader, or if you're running an organization, it starts with your leaders to ultimately drive and create high-performing people that produce high-performing results, that creates a culture that thrives, that people want to be a part of, and people want to stay. That's what true leadership is all about. So if this video resonated with you and made you want to grow as a leader, check out my next video, The Science of High-Performing Teams. It will help you create clarity, fulfillment, and alignment with yourself and your team moving forward.